everyone, my name is Melissa from Inspire Me ASAP. In today's video, I want to share with you how I introduce readers' notebooks to my students. In my previous video, you'll remember how I shared with you how my students have book nooks as a way to organize all of their reading workshop materials. So inside each one of their book nooks, they have 3 to 5 books that they went shopping for in our classroom library, 3 to 5 books that fit them like a glove. They are just right. My students also have a reading folder where they have all of their guided reading passages. So whatever passages that we're reading in a guided reading group is inside of their reading folder. The last thing that they have at the beginning of the school year is a blank composition notebook. And it's not really until this point of the school year where I really begin to explicitly teach and explicitly model and demonstrate how we use these notebooks as a tool to respond to what we are reading. This mini lesson that I'm talking about in my video today came from my unit on implementing readers' notebooks with your students, and I will put the link to that down below. One of the first things that I would do when I'm introducing readers' notebooks is I create a poster for my students that has just a very general list about all the different ideas about how you can use your notebooks as a way to show what you're thinking about as you're reading. So one of the first lessons, I would just briefly go over all of the different ideas about how you can respond to what you are reading in your notebook. So I would say, boys and girls, in our readers' notebooks, we can write, for example, new facts or new information that we learned. We can write about our favorite part in the story. We can write about questions that we have about what we read. In our readers' notebooks, we can write about what made us laugh, cry, or even gasp in surprise. In our readers' notebooks, boys and girls, we can also write about the main character, the characters in the book, and what the character is doing or what the character is saying. One of the other things that we might want to write about is about the different text features that we're learning about and what that text feature is teaching us. Once I give a very brief explanation about the different ideas about how we can respond to our reading, and what we can use our readers' notebooks for, I would then go and dive into what each one of these different components would look like in a different mini lesson. So for example, I would dedicate one of my mini lessons to explicitly teaching and demonstrating to my students about what it would look like if I were reading a nonfiction book, for example, a nonfiction book, and oh, I learned a new fact. I learned a new piece of information. And I would explicitly read a part in the story where I learned a new fact, and then I would open up my reader's notebook and I would show how I would be writing that down. Number 2, about your favorite part in the story. This is actually the example I have right here in the reader's notebook. And this is explicitly teaching my students how to write about your favorite part of the story in your reader's notebook. So responding to what we were reading, that was our favorite part in the story. And I used the book. My students are obsessed with Mercy Watson, and you probably know that from the previous videos. So I would use this book, a fiction book, to explicitly demonstrate or to model what it would look like to use my reader's notebook as a tool to respond to what I am reading. I would say, boys and girls, for example, today I want to teach you how I'm going to write about my favorite part in the story inside of my reader's notebook. So I would show my students, open that notebook so I'm ready to go, how I am reading a short portion of this mentor text. I'm reading a short portion of this story. And as I was reading this story, I realized that it made me laugh. I loved this part, and it really is my favorite part in the story. So I might just read a page or two I really just want my students to know that this is the favorite part of the book. This is my favorite part of the book. In my reader's notebook, I would show my students how we always start by writing the date, the title, the author, the genre. I really like them to get to think about what the genre is for what they are reading. Even though my students are only in second grade, they really can go beyond just fiction and nonfiction. So for example, this would be a fantasy because pigs cannot really drive in a pink convertible. I would explicitly teach my students how boys and girls, as I was reading on page 30 today, I was really laughing and I loved that part in the story. That really was my favorite part. So in my notebook, here is what I am going to write today. Mercy, Mr. Watson, and baby Lincoln were driving in the pink convertible. So a brief little summary about what I read. All of a sudden, Mercy jumped on Mr. Watson's lap and grabbed the steering wheel with her hoofs. Oh my gosh, that was so silly. This is my favorite part because it really is silly and it really is funny. It made me laugh. The picture on page 30 makes me laugh. So in this lesson, I explained to my students how, as I was reading, I thought about how this is something that's making me laugh. It's my favorite part in the story. And I want to write about that today in my reader's notebook. I want to respond to what I read inside of my reader's notebook. The next day, I might say, boys and girls, today I want to share with you how I am going to write in my reader's notebook some questions that I have about what I am reading. And that could be from a nonfiction book. That could be from, if you are teaching a specific concept in science or social studies, that would be a great idea to incorporate those topics into your mini lesson. And you would demonstrate to your students how you can write a sticky note or, put that sticky note right down inside of your reader's notebook, or you just write your questions right inside your actual reader's notebook. Another day would be explaining, explicitly teaching how you can write about what made you laugh or cry or gasp in surprise. Yet another mini lesson could be if you have a book that models strong characters, you can model to your students and explicitly teach how you can write about characters and what the character does and what the character says that's surprising, that's funny inside of the book. And then last but not least, if you're in the middle of a nonfiction unit, you can teach your students how we use readers' notebooks as a way to identify different text features that are inside of the books that we're reading. So for example, a photograph and a caption, well, the caption is teaching me about what the photograph is. And so sometimes we just use old Scholastic news magazines to dissect, cut apart, and glue those features inside of our notebooks. But again, I want to be clear in saying that this is something that I would break down into different mini lessons, especially if you have younger students. Older students, you might be able to group some of these mini lessons together, but for my own second grade students, if I'm introducing readers' notebooks as a tool to help them respond to what they are reading, then I would want to break down each one of these components and explicitly demonstrate and model what it would look like and what book I would be using, what book I would be reading, to write down what I'm thinking about for each one of these different mini lessons. If you are interested in any of the ideas that I talked about here in my video, I will put the link of where you can purchase this unit on Teachers Pay Teachers or my own website. Thank you.